good to be here again. Loving it, very much so. Thank you. So I like to think that God has a sense of humor, and if he doesn't, I do. What do you call a fake noodle? Pasta. I got one more for you. Why did number 6 run away from number 7?
7, 8, 9.
Because 7, 8, 9. You know, why not? So are you making any resolutions? Oh. I didn't do it. Not there. Are you making any resolutions for the new year? Yeah.
No.
I'm resolving to just wing it and see what happens. So you're staying the course. I like to stick to my strengths. Anyway, today's talk is about Cain and Abel. And I initially was thinking about doing it on the Adam and Eve story, but you guys all know that one, so I moved on. But, so we're going to dive into it metaphysically. And my intention is to have you understand a little bit more about how we view the Bible, as well as the intent of why and how come Cain kills Abel. That's the part we always remember, is that Cain killed Abel. But what's within it? And that's what we're going to share today. So I'm going to share with you from the Bible, Genesis 4, 1 through 16, and then we're going to talk about body, soul, and spirit. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. So the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and it desires is for you, but you should not rule it out. Now Cain talked about Abel his brother, and it came to pass that they were in the field, that Cain rose against Abel his brother and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? And he says, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hands. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out of this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. And it will happen that everyone who finds me will kill me. And the Lord said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. Lots of stuff there. Good stuff. And so we know the idea that Cain is the firstborn and Abel is the secondborn. Not that that has any real bearing on this story, except that Cain was used to getting his way. And so now he gives this offering and it's rejected. And like any of us, if our gift is rejected when we give it, especially when we give it freely, it doesn't feel good. And it felt so bad for Cain that he sought out his brother and ends up killing him. Not a nice place to be, right? So the Bible, we have a choice. And in Unity, we tend to not take the Bible literally. We take it allegorically for most cases. And that's important for us to recognize that. Because this story, there's no way it can manifest into anything that's logically or sits in our brain, because it goes, what? So Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, okay, Eve has these two children. Well, Cain has a wife. Where'd she come from? Must be his sister. No, right? Logic says no. And that Cain even says, look, people are going to kill me if I can't still till the ground. Who are these people? So it is impossible for us to take this story literally and on an historical basis. So it's important that we take it from a metaphysical element. And if those of you that might have the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, some of you might have that, you know, Cain and Abel, the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, if you don't already know this, it contains the definitions of all the characters in the Old Testament. It contains the cities, and Charles Fillmore put this Bible together in a context of what was the meaning of these cities and these people's names. He did his homework on it. He didn't make this stuff up. He did a lot of homework and came up with what do these things mean. So the main question is then, what does Cain mean? Cain means possession, while Abel means open-hearted. Two different emotions. So if we look at it metaphysically, we encompass both Cain and Abel within us. That's the true story, not two separate entities of themselves. And here's the thing, so Abel's dead with Cain's hand, but Eve and Adam have another son, and that's Seth. Now it turns out that Seth is a pretty important character in the Bible. I'll tell you why. You're like, huh? So God has replenished Eve with another son. Now you got to figure that Cain is probably in his 20s, maybe even 30s, and Eve has another child. So Eve has got to be in her 60s. Have any of you had a child in your 60s? Just check it out. Maybe they did back then. I don't know. Could be, I suppose. But it's unlikely. So another example how we can't take this literally. So, make sure I do this right. Oh, I lost my place. I'll find you though. There we go. Seth represents man's spiritual development. His first famous descendant was Enoch. Who was Enoch, say? Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Enoch is the first example in the Bible where he lives a long life, 300 and some years, and his body is what they call translated. It means he just disappeared. He never really dies. His body is transported. Now, if you believe that, that's good. Go for it. You know, it's a quest that we can make for the new year, that if I'm going to go, then I just go. Right? But more importantly, one who walks with God does not meet experiences of those in lower states of consciousness. Cain is in a lower state of consciousness, hence the murdering, while Abel is in a higher state of consciousness. Well, how do we get to that higher state of consciousness? Enoch's son was Methuselah, whose lifespan is recorded as 969 years. Methuselah was the grandfather of our next outstanding character, who is Noah. Big deal. There's a big family tree there, you know, and part of that is because of the consciousness of Cain losing his brother. It caused Eve and Adam to want another son. Who knows what the world would have been like if Cain had a higher state of consciousness? The lower state of consciousness has so much to do with how we view our relationship with God. So even though Cain is a tiller he's a farmer. I mean, he's grown vegetables. He's given his whole heart and soul into growing these vegetables, and yet God rejects it. Well, what the heck? Abel, all he does is kill a calf, and God accepts it. So there's something in the consciousness that God sees that says, hey, I'm not taking your gifts, Cain. They're not sincere. They're made with what I can get from it, versus Abel, who freely gave his first fairlings with all the love and heart in his mind. So when we find ourselves, you know, if you spend any time with me, especially this time of year, I like football, you know, and you guys have been so kind to me, because the NFL schedule has not interfered with me watching the NFL, me watching the Eagles. It's been amazing. It's been 4:30 games. I have plenty of time to go home and all that stuff. And today's no exception. Like, we're good. Go Eagles. So the point being is that I spend a lot of time watching TV, right? While I'm watching TV, guess what I'm not doing? Praying and meditating. Cain was so busy invoking what he wanted from God rather than listening to God. And that's the lower state of consciousness. When we become so busy with doing the things and that we negate our connection with God. And we take on a Cain consciousness. The mind of Cain was a symbol. In early teachings, are you of the Cain mind or the Abel mind? Abel spent time with God. And, and I like to think of things in practicality means. Well, yeah, all he's doing is sitting around watching the sheep eat. He's got plenty of time to pray and meditate to God. Well, Cain is tilling the soil, backbreaking work. Who has time to meditate and talk to God? I got to get up early in the morning before the rain falls or whatever, right? So the body and soul, when it comes to the Bible, is changeable. The body is the Bible, literally. It's the body. It's what we perceive to be the truth of what's going on in a story in the Bible. But the soul is how, it's like what the teachings are. For example, the Beatitudes. It hits our souls, the Ten Commandments, the teachings within it. But also within that is values and mores. And what's the one thing that changes from day to day is our values and our mores. Some days it's okay, some days it's not okay. And it becomes an issue. I mean, most of what's going on in our political arena is because of our soul connection to what we think is right. And then if you don't think it's right, then you must be bad because you think something different. And of course, that's not what we teach. We each have our own individual experiences with God, and we each have an opportunity to express them in this body form. However that's defined for each of us. That's the beauty of unity, is that we each have our own individual path to walk. And we choose that path based on our connection with God, or lack of connection with God. When we don't connect with that inner spirit within us, we take on a Cain mentality that says only the outer things are important to me. I wanted God's approval and I didn't get it. I'm jealous, I'm mad, I'm angry, my countenance changes. You know what that is, right? Your aura, how you perceive yourself. Because countenance, you're walking around like that. Because you don't see yourself as an able-bodied person connecting with God. So sometimes we as humans spend too much time in the mentality of the Cain thinking, where we haven't taken the necessary time to connect with God. And we can do that in many different ways. Hugging a tree, if that's what it is, or it can be in a crystal ball class. It can be in so many different ways, and you have the opportunity to invest in what is that way. And I'm trusting, since you come into church, that you probably each have your own individual ways of doing that. Maybe getting up early, reading the daily word, spending some time with music that is impactful to us, reading a spiritual book. I live with someone who reads 240 books a year. Not one of them are spiritual. Not judging. Okay? It's just, I read 12 and they're all spiritual. Because I read a page or two a day, and that's it. That's all my mind can grapple with. I want to take that information in and put it somewhere that I can pull it out later. My prayer request for what is going to happen with the Eagles today is pretty clear. I'm real clear on it. And yet, at the same time, I know that hasn't got anything to do with my connection with God. Amen. And yet it has everything to do with my connection with God. You see? So, one of the fourth tenets that we read earlier is the power of the spoken word to create what we want with our actions. So when we are seeking out, I love this metaphor of walking hand in hand with God. Yes, the way has been prepared. Some might view that as God is walking ahead of us. And that's true, because God is everywhere. Another principle that never changes, which makes it spiritual. The spiritual side of the Bible never changes, no matter what or who is reading it. God is absolute as a principle. It's a spiritual principle. God is everywhere present for anyone, everywhere, all the time. That's a spiritual principle. That is written throughout the Bible. You know, and yet some of us will take this Cain and Abel story and say, see how vengeful God was? You know, but yet God did not kill Cain for killing Abel. Why not? Because Cain's work wasn't done. And that's the beauty of being a spiritual being. Some days are better than others. We remember our prayer work, we're diligent about it, or we're talking about being diligent about it, and every new day is a new sunrise and we get to start it all over again. It's kind of like weight loss, you know? If you have the pizza one day, and then you fast the next, you're right back on track. Right? But we want the darn pizza. Right? It's the same idea. You can start your spiritual journey no matter what's happened to you or from you or about you. You can start your journey at any moment. Every moment is an opportunity to connect with God. In today's meditation, I'm going to gear it toward connecting God to our bodies. We're in a brand new year. Some of you may even have New Year's resolutions and all that wonderful stuff. And that's a beautiful thing to do, you know. And now, are you asking God to help you with those resolutions? Or are you just going off, going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this, and there's this list. But what if you made the list as you're communicating with God on what's your path for this coming year? It changes the way we view things. If we stay out of what I can get, but rather what I can achieve, or what I can give, how can I be a productive member of society? You know, it's been a problem for me, because how does a minister retire? I don't get that. I'm trying. You know, I want to, but it's not what's being called within me to do. You know, and now I get to do it with a smile on my face, right? Versus my continence I'm being punished because I'm doing what God told me to do? I hope not. You know, the idea is that the more we communicate with God, the more that we have an able lifestyle where we're open and receptive, the happier we are, the less issues we have, the less opportunities we have to pray for patience. Please don't ever do that. You have an opportunity then to use patience. How many of us want to use patience more in our lives? No. That means waiting in the lines. That means, you know, calling on God and hearing nothing. No patience. Because everything just flows when we connect with God. That's like saying, is there anybody in AA? Right? Nobody answers. You're not supposed to. Because then you don't have anonymity, right? So the point being is that in today's daily word, I love this Proverbs 16:9. The human mind plans the way, but the Lord directs the steps. Wow. If we can practice letting the Lord prepare the steps, oh my God, then we just have to take the action. We get to take the action because it's going to lead us to something wonderful, something beyond our wildest imaginations. And the last part about this story of Cain and Abel is God puts a mark on him. And that's another example of, what? You know, did he put an X on his back? Of course not, right? But they're thinking that maybe that's not what, it was mistranslated. It's one of those sections in the Bible that somebody used a word and created this mark, when in fact it was Cain has another opportunity to do it right. And that's why God didn't kill him. Because we all sin. Because what's sin? Missing the mark. It's kind of like going below the line. We know it's wrong and we do it anyway. When you come to unity and you've been here an extended period of time, you know not meditating every day is not the way to connect with God. We know that. So our job is just to find that necessary time in our wonderful busy day, in our wonderful busy lives of getting things, and calming down a little bit and going, God, here I am, what can I do? What can I contribute that makes society a little bit better? And whatever that is for each of you. And for some of us, it's raising wonderful grandkids who understand the love that's needed in our universe. That is walking the path of God. Or it could be a high school teacher. It could be you pick up food for the neighbors. Whatever your calling is, we do it with our countenance high, our shoulders high, and we say, in our heart of hearts, we know that we're following the wisdom and guidance of God. And isn't that where we want to be? I think, who the heck am I? But I think that we're all here striving to have a closer relationship with God. And we each choose our way to do that. Serving in church, somebody picking up somebody to come to church, dropping their butts off on the corner and saying, see you next week. Whatever it is, when we follow that intuitive nature of God and connect with God, we are always better off for it. When we first came to Unity, weren't you told that you can create parking spots? It's Unity 101, right? So that's part of us beginning to understand that I can get anything when I communicate with God. That's a truth principle. The backside of that is it may not look the way you thought it ought to look. And that's where we have to become flexible. We don't reject God because God said blank, blank, blank. I don't want to do that. Not me, you must be talking to somebody else. We reject God. And when that happens, our countenance goes lower. Something within us doesn't quite smooth the path. So when we ask for healing, we feel like it doesn't come. And God's like, yo, you only call me when you need me. Talk to God on a regular basis. Listen and be aware that our whole universe is talking to us. Our answered prayers can come in a song. They can come in so many different ways. This morning, Saturday nights I rarely sleep. It's me getting ready in my consciousness. And I went, oh yeah, I can look at the revealing word. I have my talk already, all set. And I went, revealing word? That's the New Testament. I'm in the Old Testament. So I walked in my office and said, all right, God, you told me the revealing word. And God said, not quite what I meant. Let There Be Light by Elizabeth Sam Turner is an excellent source to know about the Old Testament. Great book. And that's where I picked up and was able to really solidify what it all, when bringing it all together. Because I know I have Cain in me, but I know I also have Abel. And I want Abel to come out more often. Where my gifts to God is me listening and following that wisdom and guidance. Are we willing to do that? And that's the ultimate quest. And Abel always said yes, and Cain said not today. Because we get tied up and we get tangled up in all the busyness. How many of us have calendars that are completely booked? Mine is, I've got this from 11:30 to 12:30, I've got this from 1 to 2, I've got that, yeah. And then I'll pray after the Eagles win. Because that's my joy center. That's my joy center, because we need balance in our lives, And so I find myself wanting to be part of a successful team. That's what makes me think, just a quick tidbit. You never know how life is going to unfold, right? And I'm at a dinner party and they're auctioning off these things. And I put my name down to buy this big poster of a quarterback for the Eagles, Nick Foles. Signed. I'm like, all over it. He had not played a game for the Eagles. He was sitting on the bench. He was their backup quarterback. So Carson Wentz gets injured. They bring in Nick Foles. They win the Super Bowl. Well, guess what I did? I sold that darn thing for $25 a year before he won the Super Bowl. And I went, yo, I could have had something. It wasn't in the cards. But if I followed my instincts, because that instinct was there. When that man handed me, I remember it so clearly. I had the poster laying up against the wall. It was a nice, beautiful frame. The frame alone was $50, and I'm asking $25 for this thing, right? And I'm thinking I really shouldn't let it go. I really shouldn't. The guy says, no, I think I really like it. No, I really should. Everything about me told me not to do it. But money, I didn't have a dime to my name, and I sold that darn thing. Money made me override God. Little things like that. And that's the part where we as humans want to pay more attention to those things that are sitting there. I rejected God. God was talking to me. And I said, he can't be talking to me, I need the money. You know, I saw a lot of things that weekend. The point being is that being part of listening to what God has in store for us is a joy factor. It's not to be dismissed or not given enough time. Give time over to God. Allow yourself to be in that space where we can get still and hear the very voice of God within us. Because I firmly believe that God does talk to us. Our job is to listen. And sometimes the busyness in our head overpowers that ability to hear. And I encourage you to spend more time with God. And I see and know that your life will be better for it. And I see that for you. And so it